Welcome, everyone. I've attempted to welcome everyone as I have seen them join us, and I'm so happy that you all are here. It is Women's History Month in the United States, and because it is Women's History Month, we are hosting a women-specific financial empowerment event. The National Black MBA Association's Detroit chapter is actually conducting a 15-part financial empowerment series because one of my commitments to my team in the chapter, my board of directors and my executive team, as well as our membership, is a commitment to opening and sustaining the conversation of financial equity for people of color and specifically African-American professionals. My name is Lauren Williams, and I am a financial advisor at Prudential Advisors out of the Detroit market, our Great Lakes Financial Group. I have with me a colleague, Saida Smith, from the New Jersey chapter of the National Black MBA Association, who's also a Prudential advisor. Forgive me, I don't know the official Prudential name of her organization, but we all have agency names. Saida, if you want to do a quick introduction of yourself, feel free.
You're muted.
Lorena's muted?
Thank
No,
you. No, I was
yes.
sorry about that. As Lauren mentioned, my name is Saida Smith with Prudential Advisors. I have most of you may know Lauren already, so I'll just give you a little background about myself. I've been in financial services industry for about 19 years. I've been with Prudential for 3.5 years at this point. I have my MBA in International Management from Centenary University and my undergrad from Kean University, all in New Jersey. So I have a 4-year-old son. He actually will be 5 in 2 months. And the reason why I became an advisor because I wanted to educate women and African Americans on, financial literacy. So I look forward to speaking with you all and hope to answer any questions that you may have.
Very good. So I do have a wee agenda up for our evening tonight. We are a small group, so I anticipate open dialogue. Saida and I are the effective presenters and the panel. I want this to be very much a Socratic conversation, a participant-driven conversation about how to address the unique needs that women have when it comes to their personal finances. So, hang on. Why didn't you advance? Okay. So some of the unique challenges. Can everyone see women have unique challenges?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Some of the unique challenges that women have are that we live longer than men, and we often are caregivers, not only for our children, but for other relatives, as well as our aging parents. Women, as the other half of the gender in our population, often experience a significant income gap. And that income gap ranges between 28 to 40%, depending on what career path we are on. And our retirement is often lagging our male counterparts in the workplace because we take time off to raise children, we enter the workforce later in life, and we may even forfeit promotions because we are caregivers to our families and we're nurturers. By nature, we're the nurturing sex. So those factors are unique to the situation of women. They're also unique to the situation of African Americans because African Americans and other minority communities in the United States are more unique in terms of having multi-generational households. And so you might have a professional running a household that'll have 2, 3, sometimes 4 generations in it. And that college educated professional is literally carrying multiple family members with their income. So there's a very little surplus for them to accumulate. And by and large, those households are run by women when it's an African American household. Tonight's key concepts that what we as women need to focus on are healthcare, our social security, making sure that when we are married and when we are divorcing, we are aware of what spousal benefits are and how to keep spousal benefits or how to make sure that spousal benefits are not lost in terms of healthcare, retirement, and that we make their appropriate choices in terms of spousal benefits when it comes to social security. Estate planning, which is in Saida's wheelhouse. She is a partnered with a senior advisor, but they focus on estate planning in a very major way. I've heard her speak publicly over the 3 years that I've been at Prudential on estate planning and specifically estate planning for African American families. And lastly, the foundation of success in terms of finances, managing your personal finances. And so going to healthcare, it seems to be the second topic that you always hear about, except during a COVID pandemic. A lot of times in my professional conversations, what I hear is a disconnect between what group healthcare is and what people understand Medicare to be. And I would invite the room this evening right now to open a conversation and start asking questions about these three bullets: group health insurance versus Medicare, what Medicare a la carte means versus Medicare Advantage, and what that transition looks like when we go to retire, or when we have to explain Medicare to an aging parent who is retired and presumes that Medicare Part B is the equivalent of the group health insurance that they have with their employer. Does anyone have a question? And Joe, do we have anyone in chat that's chatting questions?
No one's in chatting any questions,
Okay.
But we can open the floor up.
If no one wants to, I will advance the slide. So, and feel free, we can go back if you think of something, but Social Security, there's a couple of hitches or snags in the understanding of what Social Security is. And this is important for many women who have exited the workforce to take care of their children and re-enter the workforce. Because Social Security is a compounded calculation based on the number of years that you work and your highest decade of average earnings. So if you work 40 years, they look at the highest 10 years, take that average, and then use a it's not an algorithm, it's an equation to basically estimate what your pension from Social Security would be based on your contributions. If we take a significant amount of time off work, yes, I can explain the difference between the two Medicares. Let me finish this thought, Michelle. So if we take a significant amount of time off work, say have children at 27 and re-enter the workforce at 37, those are critical years in terms of the ability to be promoted in our professional careers. And so when we re-enter the workforce at 37 with 2 or 3 kids, we're also considering what the household schedule is, and we may accept the reality of lagging behind an income if we're in a 2-income household. And so where that leaves women is not only are our incomes lower, but our Social Security benefits are often lower. And what a lot of divorcees don't understand or don't realize is that if you were married for 9 years, 11 months, and 27 days, you don't get to draw on your spouse's benefit. You have to be married for 10 years. So you might want to just prolong your divorce judgment date a few more weeks. Some people manipulate their divorce judgment dates into the next tax year for the tax benefit. If you've crossed the 8.5-year mark and you're about to file for divorce, you might as well just extend your divorce and make sure that you're legally married for a decade. So you have a few more Social Security options. And so Michelle Baker one of our Detroit members has asked a question about the difference between the two Medicares. So I will go back to the Medicare slide. So Medicare is socialized medicine, and that is a bad word until we changed presidents a couple months ago. But Medicare really is a socialized medicine platform. And what I mean by that is during our working careers, we have a significant amount of payroll taxes. It's about 28% of our total earnings. And 11 points of that go to Medicare. And we pay for the 60 years that we work, we pay into Medicare. And for the additional 20 to 35 years that we live, we draw Medicare benefits. And so how Medicare a la carte works is Part A, everyone receives Part A, whether you are indigent, disabled, as long as you are eligible for Social Security benefits of some form, whether SSI, SSD, or regular Social Security pension, you receive Medicare Part A. And Medicare Part A covers hospitalization. And what a lot of recipients of Medicare and a lot of family members don't understand often, and they get blindsided by medical bills, and you see this on television commercials selling Medicare Advantage, is that Medicare has a 20% copay. And there's some more nuances to that, because there are a couple of things that are allowed that are covered 100%, but Medicare has a 20% copay. So if you have a $100,000 hospital stay and you don't have a Medicare supplement that backs up your Medicare Part A, if you have a $100,000 hospital stay, expect a $20,000 hospital bill. And we've heard these horror stories about retirees basically going broke because of the increased cost of Medicare or medical expenses. It's because Medicare has this 20% copay. And if they do not figure out in advance what that means to them individually or how to mitigate it, then they get slapped with this 20% copay, which could be as much as one receives in a year in retirement benefits. Medicare Part B is clinical care. So when you see your general physician or any type of specialist outside of a hospital setting and any type of continued or any type of chronic care, then Medicare Part B covers that. Medicare Part D is prescription coverage. And then there is a cafeteria selection. And when I say cafeteria, I mean wide assorted, provided by multiple carriers, depending on what the exchange has, the healthcare exchange offers. You have these supplemental plans that basically cover a portion or all of the 20% that Medicare does not cover. So you pay an additional premium for insurance and Medicare Part B and Medicare Part B, but you pay an additional premium for the supplemental, and depending on the benefits that you select in your supplemental package, that 20% copay or that $20,000 bill I used in the example is mitigated. So that's Medicare a la carte. It's oftentimes difficult to align, but if you can line it up properly and you know what all your prescriptions are and you're in chronic care or you don't have a lot of chronic illnesses, then Medicare a la carte is manageable, especially for cost. Medicare Advantage is something that is new, and it's actually Medicare Part C, as in cat. And it has a higher premium than the combination of most A, B, and D plans put together. But it's really easy to use and acts like group health insurance. So it's easy to understand, and you have a lower probability of messing yourself up. And so the other piece to Medicare comes in, and I didn't put this on the slide, but the higher your income is, the higher your Medicare insurance premium is. So someone who earns or receives more than $100,000 a year as a retiree is going to have an increase in their Medicare insurance premium because the government deems that they can afford it. So it's not to sound overly conservative, but it is socialized medicine. The more money you receive, the more you pay in taxes to basically redistribute the wealth. All right, you're welcome, Michelle. Any questions? All right, I'm slipping back to Social Security. So there's three hot ages in Social Security. Most people know about 62. And a lot of people that I talk to know that 66 is kind of full retirement age, but there is a band that goes from people born, I think, in 1952 to 1959. And so their full retirement age adjusts every 2 months for each year, from age 60, from full retirement age 66 until 67. And what that means is if you were born in 1960, 1954 or 1955, your full retirement age is like 66 and 6 months or 66 and 8 months. And if you were born in 1958, your full retirement age is 66 and 10 months. And it was a way for Congress to smooth out what the Social Security liability would be. Everyone born after 1969 has a full retirement age of 67. And so everyone who's worked more than 40 quarters is eligible to draw the reduced rate at age 62. There's a carve out for widows at age 60, which is rarely discussed, but if someone has a question on it, I'll discuss it. Age 62 is basically a 40% pay cut for life. And for most recipients of Social Security, it takes those individuals into their mid 80s to catch up on the amount of money that they would have received by waiting until full retirement age, whether that's 66 or 67. And so Social Security survivor benefits. Social Security survivor benefits, if you are married and your spouse dies and you are retired, you receive the higher of the two Social Security benefits that existed in the household when there were two spouses. If you enter retirement, or if one spouse dies and the other spouse is younger than 60, when the surviving spouse reaches 60, that surviving spouse can draw a widow's or survivor benefit at age 60. And that age 60 benefit is equivalent to 70% of whatever the deceased spouse was receiving. And so there's a little carve out here for women because we do live longer and we tend to marry men who might be a little bit older. And that is a widow or even a divorcee who has a husband who's passed away. As long as they were married for 10 years, that widow or that technical widow can draw against her husband's earning record as early as age 60. And then she can delay drawing her personal against her personal record until age 70 if she wants. And so age 70 is the age at which you receive 140% of your benefit at age 62 or 128% of your benefit at full retirement age. So if you wait until 67, you would receive what is your full Social Security benefit. And if you delay that 68, 69 to 70, their Social Security benefit will increase by 12.5 to 15 points. If you're closer to the 66 band, it increases 12.5 points a year. And if you're on the 67, if you're closer to the 67, it increases about 15 points or 15%, about 15% per year. Any questions? Any comments?
I just have a quick comment, and for those that may not get or probably are aware that Social Security stopped sending out Social Security statements years ago, you should probably go to ssa.gov and register so that you can go online and to Lauren's point, you can see what your current benefits would be one, if you ever become disabled and you have to start collecting Social Security disability, or even what your income would be at 62, 66 and a half, or even 70. So when I sit down with a lot of clients and we're doing a financial plan, some people don't know what their potential, and we look at into their future for retirement, what their income would be. We like to take into consideration their Social Security income. And if you don't know that, go to ssa.gov. They're going to ask you a series of personal questions to verify your information. And then you can look on, and then you can log on at any time, but they'll probably send you an annual statement virtually, so you'll get it in your email address. So I would definitely consider doing that.
So Michelle Baker said, great note. Thanks, Saida. That statement went away. I think about 15 years ago, there was an article in the New York Times that Social Security saved $3.7 million a year in postage by not printing those and mailing them. We do receive them on our 61st and a half, or when we age to 61 and 6 months, we'll receive one. And I've seen it arrive in a couple of my clients' mail packets when they come in for a pre-retirement meeting. And then if you are still working and you approach 65, they send out another one, but they really don't send it to anyone who is not 3 to 6 months away from drawing the benefit. So to Saida's point, especially if you're considering full financial planning in terms of what happens if I become disabled before I retire, you do need to make sure that you have a login for ssa.gov. So spousal considerations. I speak for myself in terms of being a member of the majority of Americans who have to experience divorce. The divorce rate here is about 50%. And so women by and large exit marriage in a financial shambles, or they're financially set back by their divorce, even if they retain a house or they take 50% of their husband's retirement. They were not necessarily the breadwinner, and they were the nurturer, the mother in the house. And so there's a tremendous amount of catch up, as well as the separation of duties that impacts us. And I hate to sound like a traditionalist or like I'm kowtowing to tradition or chauvinism, but it's just the reality that we only have so many hours in the day to take care of things, and our heartstrings are tugged when our nieces and nephews and our parents and our children want our attention. We're not sitting down counting beans and making sure that there's enough money. We're making sure that there's enough food and there's clean laundry and the house is clean and everybody is happy and nobody is screaming and all the utilities work. So we earn less. We earn less over our lives, and we earn less in the same roles as men. And so because of that, we have to be conscious and we have to be conscious of actively saving and actively being more engaged in our own individual financial lives. Two-income households are a beautiful thing, even if it is a roommate situation between siblings or a home sharing situation between families, not just a couple, because you have the support of not having to carry your entire existence yourself, even if it's shared utilities and shared rents. You increase your standard of living, and you have another fail-safe in the home. So if you get divorced and you move back with family, it's not necessarily a bad thing. I did it, and I would probably not be where I am in terms of home ownership if I hadn't done it, because the support of a collective around us is a tremendous boost. Fewer women have pensions, and the reason that we have fewer women in the workforce that have pensions is to how long we work and how long it takes to vet. Well, let's start with pensions are almost non-existent. And then we often exit the workforce to raise children. And because we exit the workforce to raise children, we may not vest in that pension. And if we do vest in the pension, we're vested at a lower income rate, and then we re-enter. In order to keep that pension, we would have to go back to exactly the same company and hope that their pension fund was still active. And to a point that I know sounds beleaguered, but women spend less time in the workforce than men. And even if we start work early in life, we still have less time in the game because of the amount of time we spend caregiving for elderly relatives, parents, and children. Questions, discussion? Saida?
No, I don't have anything else to add to that. I do share, your sentiments. I too am divorced. And so what I often now, when I am presenting, especially to women, I just encourage them to, to get your financial house in order. Make sure you know where everything is. Do get involved with the finances, because what you don't want to do is become blindsided. Fortunately for me, because I have a finance background, my undergrad degree is in finance. My ex-husband was a man's man, where he did not appreciate, a woman taking control of the finances. So he was, he made more money than me, and he also wanted to manage the finances. And I said, okay, fine, hands off. But I also did random audits. So I was the auditor in the marriage, because I felt comfortable knowing where our finances were. So it was easier for me to get married. To get divorced, because I knew where everything was. My attorney felt like, she was like, you're in the wrong field. You need to be an attorney, because it's like I made her job so easy when I had to walk away, from the marriage, because I knew what his 401k was. I'm not encouraging anyone to to start, digging through personal information and filing for divorce, but it is important, to know, the finances of the marriage, and also, don't wait for your husband to encourage you to, get your 401k or open up an IRA. Even if you're, the homemaker in the household, understand what those benefits are, and that you too can share in having a traditional IRA, even if you are not employed and you're the homemaker. So when I sit down with, my clients who are homemakers, and, they bring in their husbands, I am often appalled by the lack of information that some women have, because they are not in the workforce. And so that just kind of pushes me to keep doing what I'm doing, because I want to keep encouraging women to just make sure you know where the money is going. Because with these statistics that Lauren just spewed out, it's very alarming. I don't want to retire. I want to retire with just as much money as my ex-husband. And I want my savings. I want a pension. I want a large 401k, all of that. So just be ahead of the game.
I would add to Saida's point, go through the finances. And the easiest one to go through is your joint income tax return. So if you start coming across your joint income tax return, he's going to think that you're doing him a favor. And so the next year that you lose your apprehension for going through your tax return if you're married. And can I get a show of hands? And I don't have gallery view anymore because I'm in presentation mode, but how many of us actually are married before I go down this road of look at your MFJ tax filing? Because the MFJ tax filing is one of the most readily available ways in which you can assess the financial health. Nakia Bright would like to. Nakia Bright, are you saying that you're married, or you have a question?
I was just saying that I was married. That was
okay.
It.
So since someone can benefit from what I'm saying, I will continue. The married filing jointly return is a once a year snapshot of what the financial health of your household is. And because it is a joint return and it's a team effort, your attention to it usually is perceived as a value add. And so if you consistently want to make sure that your taxes are well prepared, they're efficient, you understand them, everything's included, you're taking all your deductions, then the other 364 days that you're not talking about your taxes, or let's say the other 11 months that you're not gathering and preparing to have your taxes done, you can be party to the conversation in the context of being tax efficient for that tax conversation with either your tax preparer or your CPA, and that opens the door to financial trust. So, as a financial planner of almost a decade, how long have I been a financial planner? I've been a financial planner for 7 years. So, and I've been in financial services for 15, like Saida. But I've had a license to offer financial planning for 7 years. But so being tax efficient and having that conversation early is a trust builder. And the couples that sit in front of me for financial planning, holistic financial planning, if they have an open door with each other on what their tax considerations are, that's usually the biggest worry for most middle income households. Is we just don't want to pay a lot in taxes, and we want to make sure that we leverage our refund, and then it is we want to save for education, and then we'll get around to saving for retirement. And those two things should be flip-flopped. They should definitely be flip-flopped for single mothers. My mother's on the call tonight. My mother sacrificed her retirement for my college education. It's not something that I would advise. I'm extremely grateful that my mom did it. I don't know that I would have been out, finished college the way that I did if she had not, but it's not the best option from a financial perspective to do when your objective is retirement. So, advancing to estate planning, I am going to read the slide and hand this off to Saida. This is truly her wheelhouse. I offer estate planning, but I defer to her as having a much smoother, her practice is 60% estate planning. So she has a much smoother presentation and scope on estate planning. So the parts of estate planning that a financial advisor addresses are at the bare minimum, a will. And we discuss, I'll discuss trusts, or I might even ask my mom to chime in, Attorney Levita Williams, to discuss trusts, advance directives for healthcare, as well as powers of attorney, life insurance, and then going back up to wills. Beneficiaries are a good way to make sure that the things that you want to have in place for the people that you care about most get done in the most expedient way once we expire. Go ahead, Saida.
Thank you, Lauren. So in terms of wills, the first thing I tell people, my clients, when I sit down with them, the first question I ask actually is, do you have a will? And the reason why I ask that question is because if something happens to you, you want to be able to speak from the grave. I'm going to do more storytelling than go over specific information or stats because I want you to feel a little bit emotional about this and why it's important to have a will. I recently buried my grandmother in November of 2020. And unfortunately, she did not have a will. Even in the business that I am in, her children were not able to convince her to get a will. And some of the chaos that was created because of the lack of a will, it could have been avoided by having a will. You know, you want to list things as simple as, and people, the misconception is that you have to, have a ton of money or be rich or be a millionaire, just to be able to give away, some of, things that are sentimental to you, and you don't have to. It could be clothes, it could be jewelry, it could be cars. But also, if you do have, valuable items, you want to be able to list it in the will. If you have a home, what's going to happen to your home, especially if you have a mortgage and it's your husband and wife are on the mortgage or on the deed, but only one individual is listed on the mortgage. What happens then? You want to be able to spell everything out, especially if you have children. I know I can't speak for the state of Michigan, but I can speak for New Jersey. In the state of New Jersey, the judge will determine what happens to your children if you don't have a will. And I know if something happens to me in the state of New Jersey, my husband will get automatic custody. But then what if something happens to him a year later, he passes away? So I want to be able to spell out who is going to receive custody of my son. I want to be able to spell out, you know, the money that I have saved for him. Where is that going to go? And that will go into a trust. I'm not going to speak on trust, but if I have developed a trust, the trust will be able to speak directly how that money will be divided for him. So a will is very important so that you can speak from the grave, and it just speaks peace to the storm. When you die, you want your family members to be able to grieve in peace and not have to worry about burying you, not have to worry about how you want your funeral to be arranged, what colors you want to wear. Your will needs to be very detailed. And I don't know, again, and Lauren, you can probably speak to more of your area, but in the state of New Jersey, we have something called a holographic will where you can literally write it out yourself. But I also state that you get what you pay for. So we encourage our clients to speak with an attorney. And we have a catalog of attorneys that we would refer to our clients. Get it done as soon as possible. What most people don't want to do, we don't want to think about death. We know that we're born. We know that we live, we pay taxes, and we die. And so what you don't want to do is wait until you die and then your family is left with, you know, the chaos. You want them to be able to grieve in peace and speak to, you know, whatever it is that how you want to be buried, you know, where your money is, how your money is going to be divided. I have something as simple as baseball cards, you know, and in my will, I list, you know, what's going to happen to my baseball cards. I'm sorry, my basketball cards. So a will is just very important. In terms of life insurance, what life insurance is not for you. It's for the individuals that you leave behind or the debt that you may leave behind. I'm skipping trust, derivatives, and power of attorney. Health directive, sorry. I'm thinking of investments, derivatives. Life insurance. Life insurance is not for you. It is for who you leave behind and what you leave behind. If you have any debt, I was just doing a presentation yesterday on student loans. If you have federal student loans or private student loans, if you have federal student loans, if you die, you don't have to pay back those student loans, but those private student loans, those lenders, they still want their money. So what you want to be encouraged to do if you have private loans, you want to get life insurance to cover that debt. So life insurance is for your debt. It's for if you have a mortgage, you want it to be able to cover your mortgage. You have children that you want to send off to college, you should be able to sit down with someone like Lauren and myself, to be able to do an analysis for you to determine how much life insurance you and your family needs in the event something happens to you. And again, that's paying off your debt, paying off your mortgage. If you have young children, sending them off to college. College is very expensive. And so again, and there's all different types of insurance. I shouldn't say all different types of insurance. There's two different types of insurance. There's term insurance and there's perm insurance. And I'm not going to go into each of them, but term insurance is for a period of time. Most people that get term insurance, and it's the least expensive. You may have 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and 30 years. And then for permanent insurance, it is available to you until you die. Now, there are various types of permanent insurance, but that is like buying a used car versus buying a new car. You know, a new car has all the bells and whistles, and you would probably, if you don't know the difference or you don't know which one that you should get, whether it's term or perm, again, you want to work with an individual to help figure that out for you. It depends on your situation, your goals, what your expenses are, the debt that you have, what it is that you're trying to cover. I know term potentially can cover, you buy a 30-year mortgage, you get a 30-year mortgage, you get term insurance to cover that 30-year mortgage. But if you feel like you want to have permanent insurance, you want to, just not just pay off debt, but just leave a legacy behind, leave an inheritance for your children, you probably want to think about permanent insurance. And your beneficiaries, those will be listed on your contracts. Now, for life insurance, you will have your beneficiaries listed on there. That is a contract. It's already a contract. No one can argue that. It's signed, sealed, and delivered. But in terms of your beneficiaries, all of the accounts that you have, your individual retirement accounts, your investment accounts. You want to list the beneficiaries who will get what if something were to happen to you. Different from will, you can list in the will who will get what, but also depending on the type of accounts that you have, they will ask you the type of beneficiaries. And it's something that you want to review on an annual basis. Update those beneficiaries. Someone dies, a husband dies, your wife dies. You want to be able to go to those contracts, go to those investment accounts and update those beneficiaries. Because what you don't want people to do and your family members to do is to fight over your assets. So it is important to review all of your financial information on an annual basis and update the beneficiaries. I know with all of my clients, we have annual reviews. That is one of the first things that we look at. Do we need to make changes to the beneficiaries? That is very important. I don't know, did I miss anything? I didn't realize I was going to do the estate planning slide, so I did not come too prepared, but.
No, we talked about this like 40 minutes before, and that's perfectly fine. I think you covered quite a bit. Does anyone have any direct questions on trusts, health directives? I can speak to a bit of what is available in the state of Michigan in terms of the state of Michigan. Michigan.gov offers a get what you pay for will that has been crafted by our probate courts to facilitate the adjudication of a simple estate. And so to that extent, it is available. And it is a good starting point for people who are young or apprehensive about where to get started or want to take a look at something before they commit to a relationship with an attorney. There are many, many, many types of trusts, like more than 40 types of trusts. But I would say there are three that are the most important to women like those on this call, professional women and the women on this call and women party to this conversation. Those would be the revocable living trust, and specifically an irrevocable life insurance trust and a credit shelter trust. And so the difference between when you put your assets in a trust and when they're visible to say a chronic illness facility, or any type of healthcare that might attempt to use your assets for your care, is that is really the job of a trust, is to protect your assets as an immortal, non-natural person. And so to that point, does anyone have a question on how to use a trust to protect your assets in retirement? Or we can talk about how to use a trust to protect assets when you're going into, say, a second marriage, or when you're getting married later in life.
If I may,
Yes, please.
Lauren, I'd like to just speak to the distinction and the benefit of a living trust versus a will.
Attorney Williams, I'm going to reintroduce you to the room. This is Attorney Levita Williams. She is a practicing attorney in Illinois, Chicagoland. We may sound identical because she is my mother. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you for that introduction. The thought that I had is to just make a standout distinction between the will and the trust, the living trust, and the benefit thereof for the living trust when there is real estate as an asset, as a part of the estate. The existence of a revocable living trust, which would have the ownership of your real estate, protects and prevents your family members from having to probate your estate. If you own real estate and you only have a will, under Illinois law, you would literally be forced to have the estate probated your family at the time of your death, if you have not made a determination as to what happens with the property, if it's only identified in a will, it means possibly tens of thousands of dollars in probate of your estate. When that property is placed in a trust, you are looking at the shelter that Lauren was just beginning to speak about. And so I just wanted to make that distinction. If you are at the point of considering which type of estate plan to engage in, I would suggest that you get all the facts and all the information based on all of your assets and what you own presently as you sit down with an estate planner, an attorney, or a financial planner. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. So I mentioned two other trusts besides the revocable living trust. And that was the credit shelter trust as well, and the irrevocable life insurance trust. So an irrevocable life insurance trust means it's harder to get rid of. But we call them an ILIT. And an irrevocable life insurance trust is an excellent way to transfer wealth as well as protect your assets and the inheritance of children from maybe your first marriage, from the children of your second marriage, should you predecease your spouse and leave them to inherit. The Credit Shelters Trust is a trust that is used to protect the income of the surviving spouse and then pass assets on to the children of that marriage after both spouses have passed away. And I'm very focused on, in my practice, on making sure that women are prepared to become chronically ill because we, and I'm not saying we all become chronically ill, but it's a reality that we live longer than men. And when we become ill in late life, we are sicker for twice as long as men. And oftentimes we've taken care of everyone else before we get sick. And then we get sick and there are no more resources and there are very few people to take care of us. So I often have a very early conversation with a lot of my single female clients that discusses chronic illness care, and long-term care insurance and disability insurance, and making sure that we take care of ourselves and what our future may hold, even though it's an uncomfortable conversation. So the irrevocable life insurance trust, as well as the credit shelter trust, also protect your assets and your wealth, so it can transfer to your children and not be depleted if you become sick. And that's important because there are other ways to provide for us in terms of our care if we are diligent about healthcare planning, selecting the right combination of health insurance, and also making sure that we have some type of chronic illness coverage that will help protect at least a portion of our assets and or our pension. Any questions? Did I miss anything? Anyone have a question on power of attorney or advanced directives? The state of Michigan also has a resource guide for advanced health directives. It includes a durable power of attorney, help me, Mom, the durable power of attorney, do not resuscitate order. There's 5 pieces. There's 5 pieces to it, and I know it's 2 POAs, a DNR, and end of life concerns, as well as a document that basically kind of that helps someone structure a will.
Yeah. Well, we have in Illinois, we also have the healthcare power of attorney.
Okay. Yes, and that might be one of the power of attorneys in this packet. And it is also available at michigan.gov. I have a 2020 version of it saved in PDF if anyone would like to take a look at it. And it is regularly updated by the state. It's a government provided document.
And Laura, one thing I do want to point out, often what I find out when I sit with my female clients is they tend to think that life insurance, it will protect, all of their assets, or it's enough in terms of protection. And this is why that's a great segue into the next slide. And this is why it's important to speak with not just an attorney, but also possibly an advisor, because you may not know that life insurance is just not enough, depending on your assets, depending on how much money you make, depending on your own individual family circumstances. We may have to dig a little deeper. We may have to talk about disability insurance. We may have to talk about long-term care insurance. We may have to refer you to an attorney to get, a will, or, establish those trusts. I have, some family members that are caring for, special needs, children or other family members that have special needs. And then that's where trust comes into play. So you don't want to always think that life insurance is enough to cover your assets. And that's why it's important to really speak, with professionals in those areas.
Life insurance is a good start. If you have life insurance and a will, I would say that you're about 37% good. You're probably 70% better than the majority of people who haven't even started, because you've at least had that conversation with yourself, because it takes a lot of courage to face our own mortality. So we're going to segue our conversation to wrap up. There's 2 more slides, and then I'd like to, if we have enough time, have a free-form discussion. But I would say, what do? You get organized and you set SMART goals. And SMART goals are specific, they're measurable. There's something you can achieve. So SMART is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound, relevant to what you're actually trying to achieve, not something that you know that you can achieve that's not really going to help you get to where you need to get to. So be very specific. I want to do this in the next 3 months, whatever it is, set that for yourself, and make it measurable. Set some milestones for yourself, and make sure that it's something that is in your scope. And when I sit down with my clients, and a budget is further down this slide, I sit down with my clients and they say, I want to have, $100,000 saved up. And you ask them how much they earn every year, and they tell you they earn, $35,000 or $40,000. And you have to share with them that the cost of living by and large, at least in the Midwest and the Northeast, the cost of living on that salary is almost 100% of what they're earning. And that's a hard conversation to have with someone. And the way that I kind of segue that conversation is, do you have an additional stream of income? And if you don't, do you have the capacity to create it? Because the job that you have right now is not going to help you achieve your goal. And having a realistic conversation with people is more empowering than sitting there and nodding and saying, yeah, I think you can do it, and here's how you would do it, and you can save $1,000 a month, and in 9 years you're going to have $100,000. It really comes down to the inputs less the outputs is what you have left over. And so going to establishing a personal standard. What is it that you want to achieve for yourself? And what is it that you want to earn? And what is the standard of living that you want to maintain for the rest of your life? And determine how much that actually costs to create and sustain for yourself and your family. And know it inside and out. And get an accountability partner. And oftentimes that may not necessarily be our spouse. It may be a sibling. It may be a cousin. Sometimes the dangerous one is that it's your parent. And if it's your parent and you're married, that can be a little sticky. But make a budget. Budgets are somewhat embarrassing to professionals, because we think that, we've arrived at this point in life and we should know how to do these things. I have an MBA. Why do I need a budget? If my bank account is balanced and I'm saving into my 401k, what's the purpose of a budget if I have money? The purpose of a budget is it's a plan to tell you how to spend your money so you can achieve your objectives. It's a recipe, and everybody needs a recipe for sweet potato pie and chocolate cake. We need a recipe on how to get rich too. And then make sure that you check your credit rating and manage your credit rating, because that is the key to what I call the contra assets. So we've got two contra wealth accounts, and those contra wealth accounts are the interest that we pay on debt and taxes. And we talked about taxes and managing taxes, but we didn't talk about tonight is really managing the interest that we pay on the money that we owe, whether it's student loans, our mortgages, or our credit cards. And so if everyone would like, I'm going to put it actually in chat to everyone. Just a second, everyone publicly. So income minus outflow equals total potential increase in net worth. If you put this on your refrigerator and live by it, you will become much more in tune with how we actually grow our wealth and grow our money. So the higher we can make our income, whether it's from a side hustle or a second stream of income, or consulting, or earning more at work, and also controlling our outflow, which includes interest and taxes and what we spend, that difference, whatever's left over, is the absolute most that you can increase your wealth by annually. And so when I sit down to talk to someone about building a budget to get them to their personal net worth, or call it their wealth goal, we have a realistic conversation about how much is the maximum amount that's potentially left over, and the actual, never the minimum, but the actual amount that's left over. And everything in between is behavioral. Questions?
So Loren, the equation that you were just putting down, we didn't get it in the chat.
Hang on. I was supposed to send that to everyone. Hang on. I was actually chatting to Dr. Graham, and I didn't adjust it.
That happens to me sometimes.
Doesn't it? Oops.
Yeah, it does. It's like, oh, I didn't mean to send that to her or him.
All right. So it should be from me to everyone now. Income minus outflow equals total potential increase in net worth.
Love it.
All right. Questions, contributions, thoughts? We've got one more slide. Put your plan together. So I kind of went through this slide in conversation, but set an income target and really kind of hold yourself to it. It's what you are worthy of earning, and it's what your worth is. So set an income target. How much money, not do you need, but how much money how much money that you earn is actually going to help you achieve your goals and your objectives. And then hire a financial advisor. I did. But hire a financial professional, and definitely, if you don't want a financial advisor, which I hope you all do, but hire a tax professional or a CPA. And do not, if you have one and not the other, everyone definitely needs to have a professional look at their income taxes at least every 3 years, just to keep themselves on track. TurboTax is a great piece of software, but unless you have a regular kind of W-2 job and a very simple tax situation, no children and no mortgage, TurboTax is going to not necessarily be the best vehicle for you to accomplish your financial objectives. Make sure you have an emergency fund, and I can speak to this personally. For multiple times in my life. During the Great Recession, I lost 4 jobs in 3 years due to layoff. And subsequently, I became a financial advisor because I was tired of being laid off. But building an emergency fund provides you a cushion that you are not in an immediate panic. Should you lose a job, should your spouse lose a job, or should something happen to a member of your household that you have to financially support. And then manage your credit, because that's going to manage your access to be able to acquire things that you need without compromising your emergency fund. And people want to oftentimes say that I shouldn't go into debt, but I'm going to add another another real piece of logic. So we're not in debt if our total assets outweigh our total debts. So that means total assets less liabilities equals net worth. So just because we have a monthly payment on a credit card bill doesn't mean that we're in debt if we've got more than what we owe that credit card in the bank or in our 401k or in an investment account. Theoretically, yes, we owe, or actually, yes, we owe someone money. But what I'm trying to do is mitigate the emotions of actually carrying credit or revolving credit or a revolving loan or even a term loan like a mortgage. Those are not always truly debt. And so if we can overcome the emotions of how those things are managed in terms of, a monthly payment is a acceptable, it's not necessarily good, it's not necessarily bad, but it's an acceptable situation as long as we've got the financial resources to cover it and everything is in budget. If that monthly payment's put in the budget and the budget is tied to what your overall goal is and what your objective is. If your objective is to accumulate $10,000 this year, if you earn 80 and you want to accumulate $10,000 in savings outside your 401k this year, you can't do that if you're writing $6,000 checks to pay off your MasterCard. It's not going to be possible, and you're not going to achieve your goal. So you have to figure out which one is more important to you for your sense of achievement. Do you want to have accumulation, or do you want to have a statement with $0 on it? Because to the extent that you can pay back and pay the credit card back and the interest rate's acceptable, or you can earn more on your savings and investments than you pay in interests, then maintaining the balance between your assets and liabilities. And that nuance is a finance nuance that people like myself and Saida, we tread lightly there in teaching clients on how to implement that. But it's basically, simply put, the S&P 500 can return 24% in a year. And someone with a credit card that has a 24% interest rate is more inclined to pay it because they pay 2 points of interest per month. But the same $1,000 that they owe their credit card, if they invested it in the S&P 500 index fund, would make 24%. So if they paid their credit card the 3% monthly payment that it was due, and the $1,000 that they invested in the S&P 500 fund earn the 24% that the S&P 500 can earn and has earned in the recent past, then their net worth would actually be a wash, and they would have actually expanded their ability to have a quality of life by leveraging credit. So credit is leverage based on either future payments or an asset that is secured, like a mortgage. And so those are, I know that Dave Ramsey helps a lot of people, but I'm not that financial planner that says that you have to be debt free to start saving. I say that you can start accumulating for your children's college, you can start accumulating for retirement, and you can start protecting your family with disability, long-term care, and life insurance while carrying consumer credit, mortgage debt, and student loans. Because if you learn how to balance the interest that you pay against yields that you receive, and even if that yield has to be figured into, I'm going to grad school, I'm going to pay this in interest on that student loan, but this is how much an MBA will increase my paycheck and my earning ability over my lifespan. Then it's okay to go into debt, because it's not really, it's debt. But it's more, think of it more of as, it's something that you're responsible to pay. It's a liability. It's not necessarily debt that you will not be able to pay. Manage your credit and buy real estate. Real estate is the fastest way that women can increase their net worth. And it is, I really was not in favor of owning your own home for many years as a financial planner, until I began to see how the market returns on housing are completely unrelated to the stock market. I used to say that, the market's returning 10 and 15 and 20%. I'm going to invest my money in the market, and I'm going to rent and sustain the lifestyle that I want, as long as it's inside of my utilization budget, which is how much money it would cost me to maintain and use my home. The scales tipped when I watched one of my closest friends double their net worth because they strategically bought a home at the right time. And then they lived there for 4 years, and the market value of their home doubled because of conditions that were completely outside and extraneous to the stock market and to their income. And that's when I became a believer. But there are a believer in home ownership in terms of using it as a vehicle to increase your net worth. Some people try to use it as a one-for-one offset to rent, but it is not. You should strategically look to buy real estate or buy your own home, at least inside of your ability to afford that home, afford to maintain that home, and make sure that your mortgage is about 50% of the rent that you're currently paying, because that's how you're actually going to get everything to really balance out. Questions, comments?
I do just want to add the professionals that you should have on staff, especially as an MBA. Two were already listed on Lauren's last slide. A tax advisor, I'm sorry, not a tax advisor. She did have a tax advisor on there, a financial professional, and an attorney. And also, in terms of taking control of your financial life, what you want to do is just make sure that you are consistently keeping retirement in mind. So while you're, understanding your cash flow, setting clear goals, generating savings, investing in your 401k or other, whatever other investments that you may have, whether it's mutual funds, ETFs, you do want to keep retirement in mind, and having those meetings with yourself and revisiting your goals. I would definitely encourage you to do that. And in terms of creating a emergency savings, you can take baby steps. I know sometimes people feel like I can't save enough. Reward yourself, celebrate the small wins. Start off with 3 months. And then when you create the 3 months of emergency savings, go to the next, go to 6 months, start working on the 6 months. And then once you create the 6 months of emergency savings, then go to 12 months. The more you have, the better position you're in the event something happens. To Lauren's point, you get laid off, or, you hate your job and you want to quit. As long as you feel like you have that financial freedom, you can make better choices.
So I'm going to open the floor up for discussion, and I'm happy to share the last few minutes of our time block in a free-form discussion of feedback and any questions, concerns, or ideas from the ladies that attended tonight.
I would like to welcome one of my wonderful long life friends who is also a client, Dr. Sharon Graham. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Graham. And I believe that you were thinking about Central Time. We started at 5:30 Central. And so if you missed some, I'm so sorry. But this session was recorded, and I do love you dearly, and I'm grateful that you're here. Thank you, Dr.
So
Graham.
the Detroit chapter has a YouTube channel, and give us a few days. We will be able to edit the video for tonight, and we'll post it up to the Detroit chapter's YouTube channel. I was actually putting something in the chat that was part of Saida's conversation, which was take a financial checkup, write your budget, and then from that budget, it's going to guide you towards how to make decisions on your emergency fund. Yes. A budget will determine your emergency fund target. Anyone else if anyone else would like to contribute, please don't be shy. We're all friends here.
I had a question, Loren. So in addition to adding the presentation on YouTube, will this slide deck be available to be emailed to the participants, or would it be advisable just to go to the YouTube?
Oh, this slide deck is completely shareable with the
Okay.
participants.
Okay.
So, and I believe we've captured everyone's email because they were Eventbrite registrants. So yes, we'll get the slide deck out to our participants.
Very good. Thank you. It's great information. Thanks to all
I'm
of
so
you.
happy that you enjoyed it. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
Loren, I just wanted to ask a question or kind of make a comment based on something you said a little bit earlier in terms of making sure, like with your, interest rates on your mortgage and credit card interest and all that stuff, being in control of that and keeping those low. But also in like when we choose to save our money, our savings accounts, our investments, the yield and the percents on those, making sure that we put our money in places that we're going to get the highest, interest that we can, if it's like a savings account or a CD or whatever it is, So I just wanted to throw that in and get your thoughts on that.
Okay, so I made a high-level statement on balancing the finance equation in terms of, and I'm sorry, my eyes roll around when I start thinking and calculating, so I started closing them during these Zoom meetings, so you don't see me looking nuts. But I am closing my eyes so I can visualize what I'm about to say. The credit card interest and the interest on everything that we owe has a weighted average. So right now, mortgage rates are in the 3% neighborhood. And historically, they've been as high as 5%. Credit card rates range between 9 and 24%, depending on the card issuer and the credit rating of the individual. And so student loans go between, the older ones are 2.5% and some of them are up to 7%. And so you take that blended rate. I, as a financial planner in a plan, would take the blended or the weighted average of how much your debt costs you or your liabilities cost you. And that becomes my target yield for any investments that you have. If your investments are if the balances of your investments are sizable enough to offset what you owe. And that is a more emotional validation conversation. Because as we all know, as long as we're earning money and we have cash flow, that we're fine. We're fine today, but we're maybe not fine according to our 10-year goal. So to your question of savings accounts or CDs or vehicles, a CD rate, I was offered a CD rate that was less than 1% on my email earlier this week. I think it was 65 basis points. The Fed funds rate is extremely low at the moment. Thank you, Ms. Gilliam. Okay, I'll answer that shortly. So what we need to be aware of is the safest money earns the least. So any money that's FDIC insured at a bank is going to have the lowest yield. And if you are more inclined to have extremely safe money, then it is in your best interest to carry zero debt, because your debt is always going to be more expensive than anything that you could earn in a CD or a savings account. Because right now, savings accounts, regular savings accounts, are paying close to zero unless your balance exceeds, I think, $25,000. CDs, which tie your money up for a period of time, which is between 3 months and 5 years, are paying anywhere from 25 bips. That's 1/4 of 1% to 65 bips, or 85 bips on a 5-year CD. So still less than 1%. You would earn more if you bought U.S. savings bonds. And so one of the more feasible vehicles for you to participate in to answer your question, or where do I go to earn money and still have a moderate approach to the market, would be I would say an ETF that indexes market performance but doesn't fully participate in market volatility. It's going to cost you a bit in terms of management fees, depending on which mutual fund company or how you get to that investment product. But I would definitely say indexing. And so you can have access to indexing through life insurance. You have access to indexing through the larger mutual fund families like Vanguard, which is in a lot of 401ks, Fidelity, which is in a ton of 401ks, and BlackRock. They all have publicly accessible. You can go on E-Trade or Scottrade or call a financial advisor, but I'm trying to keep this away from being product specific or Prudential specific. You have access to the vehicles that I'm mentioning without going to a financial advisor, and they readily market themselves either through your 401k or through their own websites or platforms. But the yield higher than buying a U.S. savings bond and waiting 10 years is going to be found through indexing. So just a second, I'm 2 questions behind. If the S&P, this is from Cassandra Gilliam. If the S&P return is about 25%, is it better to invest in an index versus specific stocks, especially if we are closer to retirement? So depending on how close to retirement you are, you might want to make sure that you're peeling back enough assets, or the way that I set up my client plans is I make sure that they peel off enough assets to enter retirement regardless of market conditions. So that means that they have 12 months, 24 months, or 36 months of savings. And Joe, can you message me? I know that you called me, but message me instead. And so to that end, if looking at how, or let me give a more strategic example. If you need $50,000 to live on and you are 3 years away from retirement, then I will have already, in an advisor role, already have carved off 6 to 12 months of your retirement savings, 6 to 12 months of your annual income needs in retirement savings will already be in very low volatility, almost guaranteed instruments, whether that's money markets, treasuries, cash, or some kind of targeted municipal bond that has a maturity date, or that kind of it matures at the date that you are targeted to retire. But definitely, I would start protecting 2 to 3 years of your income needs as you prepare to retire. And if you are 5 years away from retirement, we wouldn't keep that much cash. But if you are within 5 years, so 0 to 4.5 years, I would definitely have at least a year of withdrawals ready. And then, do I want to index versus do I want to be stock specific? So indexing is passive. And so we'll go back to February 21st of 2020, when our stock market took a 9-day nosedive and lost 33% of its value, and everybody hurt. Everyone was in pain. And I think I was on the phone for 14 hours a day. If you had been indexing, you would have rode that roller coaster all the way down. If you were 58 years old, you probably would have pulled out some way halfway down. Or if you were brave enough, 58, and knew that you were working for 7 to 8 more years, you might have rode it down, rode it up, and thought about repositioning. You would have had no idea in the current pandemic that still persists that you would have recovered 120% of your losses by Christmas, because everyone was in a panic. And so indexing is part of a strategy, not the strategy. All right, I've got two.
I just want to add to that. You have to also think about the type of investor that you are. You know, if you're not one of those investors that you want to chase stocks and you have time to sit in front of a computer, constantly look at the news, look at, whether it's, ticking up or down, you may want to look into an ETF. To your point, because you're like going into the supermarket and you're buying the whole cereal aisle, if you will, as an example. So you're buying everything and not one particular stock. So that's just an easier way where you can kind of not set it and forget it, but you don't have to manage it yourself. There is someone that is managing, they're picking the individual stocks that will go into that particular fund, and you don't have to do it yourself. So if you don't want to be that type of investor where you have to keep researching, is this the best stock for me? An ETF is definitely an option. And I think something else that was mentioned, Lauren, we were talking, someone mentioned about retirement. You also can look up like target date funds. It's an age-based fund where it does all the allocations for you. So as you get closer to retirement, it's already built in to reallocate from a riskier type of investments to more conservative investments.
Mm-hmm. So, let me see. We have a question from Danielle Robinson that is also free debt. So Danielle says, I have taken advantage of 0% interest credit card deals and paid them off by the time the promotional period ends. Any thoughts on this tactic? I think that's great. Free money is always great. Anybody who can refinance their house while these mortgage rates are lower than inflation, they should do that too, because it's free money for 30 years. Now, nominally, you're going to pay 3 times what you borrowed, but if you look out 30 years on a 30-year mortgage and consider what inflation actually is, you will be ahead of the game in terms of interest. The critical strategy on taking advantage of those 0% introductory offers and even the balance swaps on credit cards is making sure that you pay off the balance during the promotional period. So from Cassandra Gilliam, we have, when I talked about real estate, focus more seemed to be on the first home. What are my thoughts on second homes or rental property? So I'm going to circle back to the budget. If your budget can sustain a second mortgage, then the next step to advanced budgeting and financial planning is cash flow management. And so you have to consider when you go to acquire a second or third or a piece of investment real estate that you have the ready cash flow to sustain bringing that piece of property online, and you have the ready cash flow to also sustain the operating costs of that property, even if you do not collect rent on it for 3 months or 2 months a year. My presumption on a first home, it might have been my predisposition because I just purchased a home, but my presumption was that a lot of women, either they're divorced or they are, I would call, mid-career professionals. And so we would be purchasing our first, maybe our second home in terms of chronologically our second home, but only own one piece of real estate. So forgive my oversimplification.
And then also you can consider your first home being an investment property too. I'm not familiar with your area, but in New Jersey, especially the area that I live in, we do have a lot of duplexes. We have multi-family homes. We have mother-daughter homes. So you can definitely, as your first home, live in one, rent out the other, and then collect the rent to cover your mortgage. So I would definitely consider that as an option if you're thinking about investing into real estate, especially if you're single.
And as boring as this may sound, it really all comes back to budgeting and managing cash flow, because you have to make sure that you can afford that arrangement, and you have to make sure that you have a good, intimate view of what your fixed expenses are, and that you have the cash flow and the reserves to manage your fixed expenses in any circumstances. And so I try to encourage people not to plan, not to hope not to hope plan, or not to hope on finance, but to plan on finance. And so you like
that.
So I chat with people through my role in the Black MBA and as a financial advisor and at other events, and they have these wonderful ideas and they want to become entrepreneurs, and they're like, well, once I really get rolling, this is going to happen. And you want to say, okay, pump the brakes. And this is actually a topic at Business Leaders Institute this Saturday, but pump the brakes and figure out how much it costs you to wake up every morning and eat, and then multiply that by the number of people in your household. And that is your basic budget. So, Michelle, thank you for joining us. And Attorney Williams, thank you, MBA Detroit chapter, for hosting and sharing this great information. Very encouraging. Have a great evening, everyone. If you're not on anymore, Mom, thank you for coming in. Thank you for your contributions tonight.
What's your mom?
I'm still here. Here.
Who didn't know that was my mom?
Me, not until she started speaking. You may have mentioned it in the beginning, but I didn't hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was about to leave, but I still was very interested in everything that was being shared. So I'm still here.
I got it. So it sounds like everyone's wrapping up. I know we're a bit over time, so thanks for staying. Do we have any more questions before we say goodnight? Okay, if we don't have any more questions, I know that the chapter deliverables are the PowerPoint deck to the participants tonight. Is there anything else that anyone would like to receive? And Saida and I are also very open to having conversations with the participants who were on this evening. I don't see any hands up and I don't see any new chats. So I'm going to wish everyone a good evening.
Loren, you got
Yes,
one
sir.
that says, would like to talk to you one-on-one. You have it in your
Okay,
chat.
that's Cassandra Gilliam. All right.
I'm sorry to interrupt everyone. How you guys doing tonight?
No, you're fine, Joe. It's not ladies' night. There's another gentleman in the room. I see Mr. Stanley here.
Oh, you gonna get in trouble for calling him Mr. Stanley. You know you're gonna get in trouble.
All right, Cassandra, I am messaging you directly. And is there anyone else? What I don't want to do is close the meeting and have someone in the process of sending a message. So that I just don't want to be abrupt. All right, we're going to wrap up. I'm going to leave this open. I have a couple of chats. So we're going to leave the meeting up, but we are at our point of completion. Thanks for joining us. I'm sorry that we were a few minutes over. I hope that everyone found value tonight. And I look forward to seeing you on the fourth Thursday in April for our next segment of the Financial Empowerment Series with the Detroit chapter of the National Black MBA Association. Good night.
Good night. If you haven't signed up, everyone, please sign up for Saturday's
Business Leaders Institute. Yes.
Leaders Institute is going to be great. Got some great hosts and great people for it. Look forward to you guys signing up for that as well.